Yashahime, Princess Half Demon's second act resolves the cliffhanger from the last season exactly how I would have expected. And I don't feel like that's disappointing. If anything, that's probably good storytelling. Because usually, if you have a logical consistency, I can predict where your story's going. And if you don't, it's probably bullshit. So the fact that I figured it out is more of a compliment than anything. And I think it was a very good cliffhanger they left on last time. This season is a lot more focused than the last one, where the last season was mostly a bunch of like episodic, they show up here and then fight demons. This season is the characters like, okay, we have to take down Kirinmaru. It's kind of becoming a problem. He totally killed Setsuna. And so it's about the princesses basically gathering up their skills, and getting weapons is actually a good dedication to what the first part of it is. Not that there aren't episodic episodes, and one of the ones where like Setsuna swaps in for the princess is actually pretty funny. So the episodic episodes that they do have in this season, they make count. Otherwise, they manage to stick to a mostly linear narrative, which is honestly pretty enjoyable. And it does help add layers to the character of Kirinmaru, because we're introduced to his daughter. I want to say Rion is her name. And one, she is a likable character, and she doesn't like overstay her welcome or suck up too much screen time. And she ends up being incredibly plot important, especially towards the end when she starts like possessing Towa's body. But I also like that this season sort of gets into, now I could be wrong, this could be last season, but I like that I remember that this season gets into sort of the Kirinmaru appearing out of nowhere issue. So one of my big pet peeves in media is stories where there's a sort of like established character power hierarchy, and that gets disrupted by a character seemingly appearing from fucking nowhere. So the basic idea is like Kirinmaru shows up and the spirit tree is like, yeah, he's fucking Sesshomaru's here, which is insane. That is an insane, crazy statement, because at least to my memory, and I could be wrong because it's been very long since I watched original Inuyasha, Sesshomaru has never lost a fair one-on-one fight. I cannot recall a single time this has ever actually happened. Maybe he went down around to Inuyasha, but I don't think that actually happened. I think Sesshomaru has basically beat the series like undefeatable, and then the Great Dog Demon is supposed to, like, as strong as everyone else is supposed to be, the Great Dog Demon was supposed to be above all that. And then, of course, there's Naraku, which was a whole ass nightmare, and then Inuyasha, helped take down Naraku. So it's like, where the fuck did this Kirinmaru come from? And the season helps explain where the fuck Kirinmaru came from, and it's a lot less of an asshole, and it actually manages to sort of maintain the power consistency of the show, and I just super appreciate that, because the Great Dog Demon is obviously, like, probably the strongest ever, right? And then, Sesshomaru hasn't been beaten. You could put him above Inuyasha, you could put him under him, it doesn't super matter. And then there are, like, Naraku and Inuyasha, so, like, top 4 spots are very cleanly occupied, and what the show does is it shows the sort of interactions between Kirinmaru, so you understand how this power hierarchy kind of sort of plays out. You don't see him interact with Naraku, and that's fine. You don't need to see him interact with Naraku. You do establish the fact that he is weaker than Sesshomaru, and a big motivation for him is to prove that he's the strongest demon ever. He isn't, but it does make it pretty clear that, yeah, no, Sesshomaru, it does go up above a level above him. And we see a flashback where he fights the Great Dog Demon, which is where he gets this, like, insecurity from, that just, like, bodies him, like, with zero effort. Just, like, treats him like a fucking child. Which, considering the Great Dog Demon is arguably, like, Inuyasha's dad and Sesshomaru's dad are, like, they're supposed to be, like, the strongest fucking demon ever. Yeah, it goddamn makes sense that the Great Dog Demon fucking bodies him. And there's a good scene where we find out, like, why the spirit tree says Sesshomaru went evil, because we find out that he sealed up Kagome and Inuyasha inside the Silver Pearl. And the scene that explains it is actually great, because it explains what's going on with Rin, how she got, like, this silver scale disease from Zero. And it also shows that, like, why Sesshomaru did it, because there's this sort of, like, implication that, because we know that if Kirinmaru or Zero die, then Rin also dies, which is sort of like Zero's plan. So he knows that Inuyasha was about to come into conflict with Kirinmaru, so he seals him and Kagome into the Silver Pearl. And Kirinmaru is like, I'm surprised you saved your brother, the half-demon. And Sesshomaru is like, I didn't save him. And, like, Kirinmaru thinks that Sesshomaru is just being a tsundere, because Sesshomaru was always being a tsundere. But there's also a sort of implication that, like, Kiranmaru doesn't know, that you and the audience does, that he didn't save Inuyasha. He saved Kiranmaru because Inuyasha was gonna absolutely fucking win that fight. And there really isn't anything that shows that that isn't true in the season. So Kiranmaru is probably a solid number 5 as far as, like, the Inuyasha franchise's, like, strongest demons, and that is a good place for him. He doesn't feel like he came the fuck out of nowhere. He had no business to get involved with the Naraku, and the established power hierarchy isn't disrupted. And the important thing is that most of the big players cannot be activated. Sesshomaru doesn't want Rin to die. Great Dog Demon's dead. Naraku's dead. Inuyasha's sealed. So we're left with our main characters who, although powerful, are nowhere near ready to take on the 5th strongest demon in the entire franchise. And so there still is, like, they don't need to make him the strongest dude ever, and they don't. And that's kind of great. So we will talk about the other plot, which is, like, this, like, demon meteor coming on to, like, bring demons from Earth in, like, 200 years or something, 500 years, something like that, like Kagome Towa's time, right? And how that ties back in with, like, Towa and with her teacher. I think the time travel aspects of this show are kind of a little dumb, honestly. Not like the overall show, but, like, the fact that, like, they have, like, the meteor thing and the teacher coming from the past and being, like, Kiranmaru's arm. I think that plays a little wrong. It's not super interesting. It's kind of silly. And I think that the teacher makes a fucking terrible final villain. I think Kiranmaru was significantly more interesting. Hell, I even think, like, Rion was just fucking with them and was evil the entire time, would have made for a better evil villain. But I have to say, I liked the characters. I loved the cameos and the service they gave to the old characters. Still appreciated the new characters. Some exciting action scenes. Great to see the characters develop and stuff like that. Like, it's a good balance of, like, old and new, I think. And I kind of love how it ends, because, like, it does end. This is clearly the end of Yashahime, and I think everyone ends up in, like, a nice, satisfying place. And you know what? I'm a sucker for a happy ending. So yeah, Yashahime, Princess Half Demon, the second act, and honestly, the whole show was honestly just kind of like a delightful experience. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye bye.